Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Ariel Property Advisors, Sterling National Bank, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AVR Realty Company, Amerant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, B6 Real Estate Advisors, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Commercial Mortgage, Citizens Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handler Properties LLC Handler Real Estate, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, SJP Properties, Stonehenge NYC, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Merengoff Family Foundation, and these friends. So they call it transit-oriented development. A lot of people have different understandings of what the term is, where it's going, what's happening, and what takes place in the transit-oriented development in the tri-state area. So I've assembled these leading experts on the topic to talk about transit-oriented developments in the tri-state region. My guests include Seth Pinsky, Executive Vice President at RXR Realty, Deborah Tantliff, who's the principal and founder of Tantum Realty, Adam Altman, who's a principal and co-founder of KABR, and last but not least, Jonathan Schultz, who's the principal and CEO of Onyx Equities. So, Deborah, you've been helpful today bringing a couple of people on the show. What's a transit-oriented development?
I think that really depends on where you are. The common perception is that transit-oriented development is...
It means I have a train,
It means you have a building with an apartment upstairs, ground floor retail on top of a train. That is, I think, what most people assume as transit-oriented development. And the reality is...
So we've had transit-oriented development in New York City with trains right next to buildings on Fordham Road and other places, all over the city. We've always had transit-oriented developments in the city of New York. So now we're talking about expanding it, correct?
Yeah, you have to align the use of transit in suburbia throughout the tri-state region. And other than the 5 boroughs, there's different modes of transportation and there's different paths that those transportation modes take you to and different uses for different reasons. So it's understanding the combination of the employment drivers and where those people are commuting to, coupled with the quality of the mass transit to understand what you should really be developing on top of, or nearby that transit system.
Which is something we discussed in the Green Room with Jonathan. You were talking about Ridgewood.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Ridgewood and transit-oriented development. It may not be directly to New York City. It may be within New Jersey, correct?
Yeah, I think, listen, we have office tenants in New Jersey. New York's not the only place that has a big, presence of companies working here. So I think everyone's way more focused on labor. It's everything. Otherwise, your companies cannot grow and you can't succeed. So being near a train, in theory, makes people feel it's easier to get to wherever they got to go in today's day and age. But we're still a driving state, yet as the generations switch, the baby boomers, the millennials and the Gen Z switch over, and want to come out to the suburbs, I think it's a plus.
Seth, you have a significant amount of transit-oriented development, predominantly in Westchester County and Stamford today. What's the mission and the thoughts of RXR with regard to that type of transit-oriented development?
Well, what we've seen in the market is that there's a significant demand for walkable, diverse, transit-accessible housing that also is affordable. And that's of particular interest to two ends of the demographic scale. On one end, young people who are just starting out their career, who are looking to live in these more urban-style environments. And on the other hand, you have aging empty nesters whose kids have gone away. They don't want to have to walk up and down stairs and shovel the front walk, and don't want to have to drive everywhere, but who still want to stay in their communities. And so the feeling that we have is that these transit nodes in the suburbs could be particularly attractive to those groups. And those are groups, by the way, that the suburbs are having a very hard time retaining, which is creating all sorts of secondary problems for the suburbs themselves.
But also in some of your developments, you're looking at, as opposed to what Jonathan was talking about, the office space in New Jersey, many of the people who are going to rent or who are renting right now in Yonkers and New Rochelle, you're looking at them traveling into the city.
Well, it's really a combination of both. You have some people for sure who are looking to do the daily commute into the city, but you also have large numbers of people who work in Westchester County, Fairfield County, and other suburban counties, but who still want to have this lifestyle, don't want to have to do the reverse commute from Manhattan or elsewhere, who are interested in living in these areas. And just to see the potential for that market, all you have to do is jump on a train at Grand Central heading up to a place like White Plains or Stamford, and it's amazing the number of people in the morning who are getting off the train in those communities going to their workplaces. And the thought is that if we could provide them with the kind of housing that they're looking for, but at a significant discount and closer to their workplaces, that's an advantage
What
for
age
everyone.
group are we talking about?
When you look at the reverse commute, that tends to be younger people. But again, these downtown markets in the suburbs, I think, are capturing people at both ends of the spectrum, younger and older.
It used to be one way into the city, and I feel it really is a two-way push-pull in and out of the city or in the suburbs, depending on where they are in their careers and having a family.
What do you see in your Stamford property?
So Stamford is a really interesting community. It's highly transit-oriented because it's quickly commutable and accessible to New York, but in both directions. And you see that happening daily. You also see the proliferation of some of the key drivers for communities and for to make these communities attractive to millennials and to empty nesters, which is restaurants, entertainment, university, medical. All those things are coming to Stamford, and that's really driving both the office and the residential growth in the community. Because there's been a lot of recent residential development, I think some of the rental growth is not happening as quickly as some developers would like. But if you're living in the community and you're participating in the community there, it's really a robust experience.
Deborah, let's talk about some of your developments that you're doing in New Jersey, which you would consider some transit-oriented.
So Adam just described it really well. So we just completed a development in Red Bank, which is a transit-oriented community. So the property that we completed is a 5-minute walk from the train station. But the reason that you're living in Red Bank is not necessarily to take that train every day
Right,
to
because
Manhattan.
it's a long train ride.
It's a long train ride, but you've got the community, you've got the arts and the culture and the theater and the antiques district and the waterfront and downtown and the restaurants and the nightlife. So when you're looking at transit-oriented development in New Jersey, again, it's where is your lifestyle taking you on any course of day? So we're working on a major redevelopment in East Orange, as an example. The Essex County transit-oriented, opportunity is a very unique opportunity where that end user is potentially commuting to Manhattan, but is also potentially commuting within Essex County for work. Or into Hudson County. So East Orange, as an example, has 2 Midtown direct train stations and is now starting to see a lot of multifamily development opportunities happening The challenge in East Orange is the internal infrastructure in the city and the connectivity within the city. There's incredible arts district and a commercial business district, and they have incredible music festivals and spectacular events. But it's the opportunities of aligning the end user who's commuting on a daily basis to coming home at night and walking out downstairs on the street, and what are they doing?
What about Montclair?
Montclair is also a spectacular community where the transportation access is remarkable. So understanding New Jersey's transit opportunities is as much about understanding the quality of the transportation and the length of that commute.
With regard to that, Jonathan, a couple of months ago, acquired a property which probably is one of the best transit-oriented development being in Newark. Let's talk about that in Gateway.
Yeah, I mean, the name Gateway is apropos. To me, it's the single best transit-oriented location in New Jersey because it is very close to the city as well. And what it allows you to do, companies that want to locate in areas want to know that you can live in the area, have experiential things to do in the area, but they also want to know they can recruit from further distances, right? You can get people from New York to come here. You get people from Long Island and other parts of the surrounding area as a potential recruit for your company. And, labor is the number one, I think, focus of corporations today. They know that is how they're going to be sustainable in the future, and it's getting tight. So it's a very important factor.
Well, and I think that's a really interesting insight, and it's worth just dwelling on that for a minute, which is that in the past, suburban development around train stations was primarily focused on commercial development, especially in places like Stamford and White Plains. And the challenge that occurred was that originally they were located there because that's where the CEOs were, and companies made their location decisions based on where their CEOs lived. Over the last 10 or 20 years, that's been completely flipped, and now companies are making their location decisions based on where their workforce is. And that's created a real challenge on the commercial side for the suburbs because the workforce has been moving into the cities. And so the suburbs have had a very hard time competing. That's undermined their tax bases, which has created all of the problems with high property taxes that we see in the suburbs. So what's now happening is that I think a lot of enlightened suburbs have realized that they need to attract that workforce first to their downtowns, and that then the businesses will follow.
And I think what RXR and my fellow panelists here and Kaber has recognized is the definition of transit-oriented has really expanded. And the people who were focused on living in the city, right, the millennials are also getting older now, right? And sharing an apartment in Manhattan where the rents are 2 or 3x might not be as palatable as living in a luxury building in White Plains, Stamford, New Rochelle, Jersey City, where any of us are developing and building.
Jersey City has probably seen over the last 10 years the largest number of new residential apartment houses and office buildings. And you're involved with that. Let's talk about Jersey City and the light rail and the other things.
Well, Jersey City is the ultimate transit-oriented destination in New Jersey. It's oriented to New York City. That when people talk about transit-oriented, originally they were talking about what's oriented in terms of proximity to Manhattan. That definition has expanded. So what does that mean now? Now it really is a word for livability, commutability, lifestyle. So when people say now we want to live in a transit-oriented community, what they're really saying is we want livability, lifestyle, and commutability to maybe a larger metropolis. Jersey City offers all of those things in spades. So you really have that ability, and so we like Jersey City. We like the development there. Although we'll see how much development continues in Jersey City. The past decade in Jersey City has been amazing, but with some of the affordability, 20% affordable, and some of these other things that they're looking to insinuate into the process there, that could change the dynamic.
But I think this is something that Seth and RXR has done very well. Working with the municipalities is very important. Let's talk about that, Seth.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that was the experience that we had in New Rochelle, where the city instead of coming up with a master plan for its downtown on its own, it put out an RFP for a master developer, and we happened to have been selected. And what ended up happening was that we were able to sit at the table with the city and with the community as the master development plan was put in place. And the benefit that presented was that on the one hand, you had the city and the community who were making sure that the developer was going to share the benefits of development with the larger community, and that things like affordable housing and other priorities were going to be part of the master development plan. But on the other hand, having the developer at the table allowed us to say from time to time, well, all of that is worthy and important, but you can't make the numbers work, and let's try to figure out ways to get to your goals while also still encouraging development.
Okay, which relates to what you just said with regard to the affordability component.
Correct.
What requirements that you need. But you need a municipality that's open. Newark, we've seen with the mayor changes over there, opportunities over there. Light rail is very important.
So I was just about to say, Jersey City is a tale of two cities, because depending upon where in the city you're living, your transit access is very different, right? So if you look at the west side of Jersey City and the south side of Jersey City, as compared to a Bayonne market, which is light rail and now has a new ferry that's coming, the opportunities for development and growth in Bayonne are, extraordinary. And you have an administration who's working very proactively with the development community to bring in a lot of new housing and a lot of industrial and a lot of mixed use. You look at a community like Hackensack where we're working, Hackensack has no trains. Hackensack has, they do have trains. That's not the normal mindset of a Hackensack Bergen County resident. They have an exceptional bus system. They also have a county-sponsored bus system throughout the city. So again, it's understanding the local municipality, how they are operating within their county regime, and the county employment drivers that are bringing people into those urban hubs in those municipalities, and how they're doing their planning to allow for that growth, utilizing their transit systems.
Jonathan?
I know we call it transit-oriented development, but I just think it's only one piece of what you have to think about today than the past. Because, housing's so important. People want to live, work, and play. It's this whole new generation of thinking. I mean, we're changing how we build our buildings, how we do tenant fit-outs, what amenities we'll offer. Some of the things we're putting in here, I know they're all experiments and we'll figure it out. We would just think, how are we going to rent that space, not how are we going to, make a great experience for people
Right,
to
but
come.
with the aging baby boomer wanting to stay within the region, I think that's changing the market also. I think your development at, on the Long Island Expressway,
North Hills.
North Hills is a perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, it's what the challenge is often with these developments is that you have people who generally want the same environment but are at very different points in their lives, and how do you accommodate all of them? And the amenities that you put into these buildings are now increasingly important, and not just the amenities in the buildings, the amenities of the community as well. And you really have to think holistically about these things. It can't just be, we're going to create four walls and rent someone a white box. You're selling someone an experience. And part of that experience is the connectivity into New York City and everything that New York City has to offer. But there also has to be something in the immediate neighborhood, something in the building, classes, exercise rooms, programs of various types. And that's a key part of this whole formula.
These communities are becoming much more tailored to different parts of the population, which I think is what Seth was saying. So baby boomers want a certain type of community, millennials want a certain type of community, and as developers, we've recognized that, and we're looking to tailor these communities to those populations, to those groups, with both amenities and other locations and access points.
But it's starting to blur because everyone now is connected. We have millions and millions of devices, from people that are 80 years old all the way down to 9 years old, which I think is too early anyway. So we're at like a different evolution of this even right now. And I think people are expecting more, and I don't really think it matters how old you are. And you have to think about that when you're building anything. And what the community offers matters in a huge way.
How open are the local municipalities to discussion of different opportunities?
I think that it varies community to community, but I think that the trend is working in favor of this kind of transit-oriented development of mid and in some places higher density development around transit hubs. And the reason for that is that communities are realizing that the old model just doesn't work, and that they have to do something in order to change the trajectory, in order to do something to generate more tax revenues so that the tax base is spread more
What about
evenly.
the affordability?
So, yeah, I don't think in New Jersey there was as much of a upfront proactive, let's change our approach. I think that you are seeing a lot of municipalities now moving forward in a much more forward-thinking way with respect to development, but that was really a result of legislative-driven and litigation with respect to affordable housing being tied up in the courts for so long. So the fact that municipalities, most of the municipalities in the state have now negotiated and created settlement agreements where they've outlined their affordable housing deliverables that they're going to be obligated to bring. Towns are now proactively planning and identifying opportunities for redevelopment. What gets built?
Okay, but
We'll see.
with regard to that redevelopment, I think you people were involved with it. A couple, I know that with the McCallie properties, some of these office buildings that were built over the years for the corporate executives because they lived in the neighborhood, a number of those properties have been demolished and made places for residential housing.
Yeah, a lot of those. I think that's created an opportunity for John and myself, because as these older, more obsolete office buildings get taken out of circulation, and landlords who and an ownership who have not committed to keeping up with the amenities and the changes, those buildings are no longer relevant, and that effectively has shrunk the market. So
Right, which has helped in the Westchester market because the amount of office space has been significantly reduced, that the vacancy factor has gone down significantly.
it's helped in Westchester, it's helped in New Jersey and Connecticut. It's helped any good office owner who has cared about his buildings and invested back into the buildings. The market's now as tight as I've seen it in probably a decade.
I think a little less in Jersey. Where we found success is it's harder to stay where you are and fix your building today because of all the different things we have to do. So empty, even though it's more of a binary deal, right? You're buying an empty building, you got to lease it, it's speculative. You have much more of an easy time putting together what the right program is for the tenants, and we've been really successful. So this thing, it has great bones, great connectivity. Like Brookfield Place has all those buildings connect in this beautiful atrium. Obviously,
Right.
This is different, but we have all the essentials to make that experience come to life. And, from F&B to different entertainment type retail through the concourse. Remember, we're a public space walking through, so you get to the Prudential Center that way. People use it in a
To the
variety of
stadium and
different ways.
everything,
To the
right.
stadium, yeah.
I could say in Overpeck Corporate Center, which is in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey, which is in Bergen County, there the county has been a big proponent of the light rail, which we expect to have come in the next hopefully 3 to 5 years. So there, transit-oriented won't just be about connecting to New York. Transit-oriented for Ridgefield Park and for the 1 million square feet that we have there will be about connecting to Englewood.
Right,
Connecting
to
to
Bergen
other,
County, right.
other small urban, suburban communities where you can dine and you can go to lunch or breakfast. So that connectivity is a whole...
Let's talk about Weehawken, which has a significant type of redevelopment.
Yeah, so listen, Weehawken, West New York, down, the Hudson County waterfront, Gold Coast area, right? You have the benefits of all the amenities of waterfront, all of the amenities of mass transit, the benefit of access to Manhattan if you work in Manhattan, but you have a large number of employers now based on the Jersey side of the river. And now there's housing opportunities for those people to live right there.
If you look at what SJP and the other group, Kushner, did across the street in Fort Lee, even though there's not transit over there, they've created their own transit by having minibuses.
Right, they have a bus into the
Okay,
city.
they have a bus into the city to the Port Authority.
But I'd argue that is transit-oriented now,
Exactly.
because not only are there shuttles, and you have ride shares, Ubers, Lyfts, you could take an electric scooter. There's so many different ways to access other places where you can get to other places, it is transit oriented.
Let's talk about ferries, because in Garvey's Point, isn't the ferry an important point?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are multiple modes of transportation that now are used throughout the region. And I think thinking about transit connectivity, not just in terms of trains, but also in terms of things like our waterways. The city has done a great job with its ferry system, and what's planned for Garvey's Point will allow people to commute into New York City from there in 45 minutes on a great, beautiful transportation mode, and have a really nice commute at the same time. But I think you raised a point a little bit earlier that I just wanted to touch on for a second, which was affordable housing. I think that really the story here is less transit orientation and more about affordability. And I think that's really the key challenge that the region faces, is creating enough affordable housing of the type that people really want. And the beauty of developing in the suburbs is that even the housing that isn't affordable housing with a capital A, capital H, but is actually affordable with a lowercase a and a lowercase h. The rents that you end up charging in these suburban downtowns are a fraction of what people would pay for housing that's of the same quality with, in many cases, the same kind of environment that you can find in the outer boroughs of the city.
And with the mass amount of college students who complete their education who want to come to the tri-state area, we need the affordable housing. We need additional housing, and that's why the regional suburbs are growing quickly. So I'd say my apple seemed positive with regard to development in the area. I'd like to thank Seth, Deborah, Adam, John. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.